Hello everyone, hope everyone's doing great. Today we are wrapping up my analysis on the Arc weapons in Helldivers 2 with the Arc-12 Blitzer, which has gotten popular recently after receiving a 50% increased rate of fire last patch. First we looked at the Tesla Tower, then the Arc Thrower, and today we're going to close out this whole trinity of arc lightning weaponry that is until Arrowhead introduces another arc based weapon. But that will be then and this is now, and as for now, I will be breaking down the Arc Blitzer, sharing my thoughts about everything I feel like there is to know about the weapon, with the aim of simply info dumping all the key points to you in the hopes that this information will help you deciding whether or not it will be worth it to bring it with you in your dives. So before we begin, a quick overview of what we'll be covering this video. We're going to be starting with 1, the basics, and here we'll be discussing the fundamentals of the Blitzer, the bare minimum of what you should know, which is thankfully in my opinion not a lot and it's pretty straightforward. Next we're going to talk about the arc lightning, because for some reason the arc lightning shot from the Blitzer behaves a bit differently from that of the arc thrower, so we'll be spending some time to cover that as well. After that will be our third topic, moving on to gameplay and use cases. There I will share my thoughts on how effective this gun is in both bot and bug planets, and where did I feel like it shined and where it felt like it had some shortcomings. Next, our fourth topic will be tips, tricks, and interactions, and here I'll share some of the unique things I found out while using the Arc Blitzer, as well as some of my personal tips to try and maximize your effectiveness with it. And then the last topic here is my overall thoughts. I'll just be wrapping up the video with my piece on the Blitzer and how I personally feel about the weapon. Also, a couple of disclaimers. Everything I'll be saying about the arc lightning from the Blitzer is purely from what I observed. I of course will back up my claims and statements with clips of these observations, so they aren't just coming straight from out of the blue, but I am not confident enough to say that I know exactly how the lighting from it works 100%. Next, I want to give a heads up that there's a lot of flashing lights this video, so if you are sensitive to that, please be advised, as it may negatively affect your viewing experience. If that's all fine, I'd like to welcome you all on board the Force of Perseverance, a name that I thought was fitting to commemorate the last of, well, for now, this series of arc-based reviews. So looking into your armory, you'll notice that the weapon stats display shows the Blitzer with 250 damage, infinite ammo, a fair kick of recoil, which in my opinion, given the way this gun fires, is pretty much a negligible stat, and the most recently updated rate of fire, moving from 30 to 45. It mentions here how it doesn't have any special traits, but if we were to insert something here, I'd say that it should be that the weapon has medium armor penetration and that your shots have an auto-targeting feature. Like any other arc weapon, the targeting aspect of the Blitzer does not distinguish friend from foe, so be wary of where you're aiming it. Still on the basics, right here you'll notice that when fired there are 5 different bolts of lightning. Each bolt deals 50 damage, and if all your bolts connect, you'll deal 250 damage to your target. The Arc Blitzer is a pump shotgun, and after every shot you must wait until you can fire again. The waiting time is kind of disguised as this charging animation where you pump the weapon and it rotates the cylinder, but you don't really need to have to sit through this animation or even have the weapon out for it to charge, so long as you can just wait for the charge time and then it's ready to be fired again. As for how long you have to wait, I timed it from the first frame you fired it up until the frame you fired it again, and it comes out to around 1.4 seconds. Like the Arc Thrower, the Blitzer fires in a cone, but the Blitzer's cone, probably because it's a shotgun, is a bit wider. The Arc Lightning fired from the Blitzer goes as far as 30 meters, but it seems that the auto-locking range for the weapon caps out at about 25 meters, so you'll still be able to hit targets as far as 30 meters, but it's not guaranteed you'll get them at that first or even that second shot. Lastly, the Arc Thrower heavily staggers the non-heavy units, and stagger is most commonly seen by just stun locking a unit in place, but the shots from the Blitzer not only stuns the enemies but also knocks them back slightly. This is great for giving you and your teammates some breathing room, as well as to prevent your team from being swarmed. Now that's it for the basics of the Arc Blitzer, and we're going to move on to the Arc Lightning behavior, which I was the most curious about. And let's start with the elephant in the room and begin by saying that the weapon does not chain the lightning from one target to another. If all 5 of the lightning bolts shot from the Blitzer were to strike one target, they would pretty much end their journey right there. The auto target for the lightning still seems to direct it towards the enemy center, and it would be absolutely insane if the weapon is able to have each of those bolts trigger an additional chain of lightning. This also makes sense as to why the Arc Blitzer isn't shown here in the circuit expansion of ship upgrade, where the lightning from the Tesla Tower and the Arc Thrower are able to gain one additional chain to another enemy. Even though the Blitzer fires 5 bolts, it seems to only shoot towards a maximum of 3 selected targets per shot. As to how those targets are chosen, the Blitzer usually prioritizes targets that are closest to it. When it comes to imagining how the targeting would look like, there's multiple ways of approaching it. As you can see, we're going to visualize the Blitzer and the cone that it uses to target and auto lock on enemies. Upon firing, the Blitzer can target up to 3 different enemies, and this isn't always as consistent as I found out. And even if it were to hit 3 enemies, with 5 bolts being fired at 3 enemies being shown here, question here is, how does the Blitzer distribute those remaining bolts? Does it shoot an additional bolt between the 2 closest enemies? And if it weren't to strike a 3rd enemy and only target the first 2, how would the bolt distribution there look like? Would the closest one get 3 and the other 2? More on that point, just because enemies are close together and in the cone, that doesn't always mean the Blitzer will always shoot multiple targets, because it can still, as I've seen, hit a single target and direct all 5 bolts to it. And then a final question I have about all these scenarios is, do 5 bolts always shoot out? And if so, do they always land? And if you're just as confused as I am, then you and me are pretty much right on the same page. What helped me make my deductions on the Arc-12 video was watching gameplay clips in slow motion, and doing it with the Blitzer has given me more questions than answers. So we're gonna go through these clips together, and hopefully someone out there can help me make some conclusions. In this first clip, you'll see that a shot from the Blitzer fires all 5 bolts, with 1 going off to the left hitting nothing, but 4 do make contact with the hunter. Now, the hunter that was targeted is not technically the closest thing to the Blitzer, but the other hunter just might be outside of the targeting cone for the Blitzer. The main thing to note from this clip here is that the bolts can be fired and they can be missed. In this next clip, 2 hunters enter view and then I fire. Now 5 bolts fire and 4 go to the hunter on the left and 1 goes to the hunter on the right. It would make sense that the closer hunter gets more bolts, but why is it distributed in a 4-to-1 way? Moving on to this next clip, I fire at a scavenger. Bolts fire, and despite it being not only the closest enemy but also the only enemy within view, only several bolts went into it. As you can see here, some went towards the scavenger, hitting it, while other bolts were fired but missed entirely. In this next clip, 2 pouncers are right next to each other, and one is slightly in front of the other. I fire intentionally in between them to try to get the lighting to fork, and the closer enemy receives 3 bolts while the other pouncer receives 2. Thinking about the range, the cone, the auto lock, and the distance, this plays out exactly the way I expect the Blitzer to. Now again, the reason I do this slow-mo review of the clips is to try and figure out a pattern, and all these different scenarios make it hard to find a pattern, and none makes it harder than this next one that I'm going to show you. And just for fun, for this clip, we're going to make a game out of it where I'm going to pause it just before I shoot, and you're going to try and guess, and big brownie points to whoever can unravel this mystery for me. So let me set the scene here first. So I'm going to pause it right here. So it's a target-rich environment, Blitzer is fully charged, ready to fire, and when I do, what do you expect to happen here? Now who expected that? Who expected not only would 1 random enemy get hit, not even the closest one, but only 1 bolt would get fired? So I wish I was able to better define and nail down the behavior of the Blitzer Lightning, but this is the best that I can do, and the fact that it's not absolute is also a bit upsetting, because the only thing I can accurately say about the Blitzer Lightning is that it can fire up to 5 bolts of lightning, the auto lock can target up to 3 different enemies, and the closest enemy is usually both targeted and receives the most bolts. Beyond that though, the Blitzer Lightning is still a mystery to me, and if you have anything, even an itch of what it may be and what its behavior is like, please share your thoughts in the comments. But that's it though for the Blitzer behavior. We're going to move on now to the gameplay and use cases. Despite the breakdown of the Blitzer's inconsistency with the Lightning, I have to say that it's still a good weapon. And when I say good, I mean good as a primary weapon. It's good at clearing small to medium-sized mobs, and it's good for crowd control. Starting with the bots, I found the Blitzer to perform poorer here compared to the bug planets. Since the bolts still try to target the enemy's center, tall enemies such as Berserkers and Devastators are harder to headshot and take out quickly. With most of the enemies being this way, you'll rarely find yourself capitalizing on that headshot damage multiplier, and you'll be taking multiple shots just to kill a single Devastator. Heavy Devastators, the one with a shield, can even block the bolts, preventing them from being even stunned if they're able to block all 5 shots. And Scout Striders are also tougher than usual to take down, since the auto target would also try to go for the reinforced side instead of the rider. Lastly, a lot of the automaton bases are littered with manned sentry turrets, and this was a piece of cake for the Arc-Thor, since the Lightning could arc through the turret and into the shooter, but since the Blitzer Lightning does not arc, the turrets are basically a shield for those gunners. Next, given your short range, you have to take most of your fights in pretty close quarters, which is hard since there will be rocket barrages and concentrated fire coming your way most of the time. To remedy most of these, you should take with you a long-range weapon, a support weapon with good damage such as an autocannon or a railgun, but then you should also use your Blitzer when Berserkers are near or when those troopers jump pack really close to you. If you want to use your Blitzer constantly and you want to save your support weapon for something just for the heavies, then I would recommend taking maybe an EMS mortar and stun grenades, which will be helpful in disabling troops and allowing you to get closer to them. As for a backpack slot, I feel the most useful to you in the automaton planets would be the shield generator, which will help you move more and getting closer to bots, as well as preventing the aim punch from redirecting your shot entirely in some off direction. When it comes to enemies, assuming each shot fires 5 bolts and all bolts hit the intended enemy, it will take 1 shot for the troopers, about 6 to 8 for the Devastators, and around 4 to 5 for the Berserkers. When it comes to the heavies, you can't kill hulks up front using the Blitzer. You have to shoot them at their weak spot behind, and even then it takes almost 10 shots to destroy them this way, so I highly recommend against it. You are also able to technically destroy tanks and even cannon turrets with it, but it takes way too long that it is far beyond the realm of practical, so I recommend not doing that with the Blitzer as well. As for the bugs, bugs, you definitely see a whole new light about the Blitzer. When it comes to the bot planets, only the bot troopers are able to call for a bot drop, but in the Terminid planets, almost any bug can initiate a breach call, and being able to stagger them through a call and prevent them from calling one is very helpful and very useful. You're also able to deal with pretty much the entire list of bug enemies, minus the chargers and the battle titans. You can kill a charger, but not from the front the same way as you can with the arc thrower. You can shoot in the behind and you can trigger the bleed out in maybe 6 or 7 shots. And for the battle titan, you can destroy their bile sacks underneath to prevent its spit attacks, but you're never really going to kill one straight up doing it this way. For bug planets, I like to run the jump pack, allowing me to maneuver my way around a lot easier and to maximize my movement in between shots. If you're not a jump pack fan, the guard dog rover is also a great choice, able to assist you in keeping enemies at bay and allowing you and your team to more efficiently deal with the horde of bugs surrounding you guys. Since it's not meant for taking out heavies, I like to take support weapons to deal with them, such as EATs, and also take ordnance such as the orbital rail cannons for the battle titans. When it comes to enemies, you can one-shot any of the small bugs, including the hunters and the shriekers. You can 3-shot nursing and battle spewers. You can 3-shot hive guards and 2-shot brood commanders. You can even consistently kill a stalker in about 3 shots. And there's not a lot of complaints about the Blitzer when it comes to the Terminids, and with increased rate of fire, you can definitely fry a lot of bugs. A quick thing I want to bring up while we're still in the gameplay section of the video is that the idea of running and gunning, in which you fire the Blitzer and then use the downtime of the charge to kind of reposition yourself, is very important. It's very important so that you don't stand still while aiming in front of a rocket devastator or while battle spewers are priming their peak volley. The reason why the run and gun method works so well with the Blitzer compared to other weapons, even if there are shotguns, is because of the auto lock feature of the weapon, where your precision is not really necessary to hit a target, so you can constantly hit fire and move in between charges. With this run and gun playstyle, you're able to output damage quickly and still maintain a very comfortable amount of distance between you and your enemy, especially with the knockback built into the Blitzer. Now, moving on from gameplay, we're going to talk about some tips, tricks, and interactions. Starting with interactions, your lightning from the Blitzer will target health pods and sentries alike. It won't damage them or have any effect on them, same with the ballistic shield. The arc thrower and the Tesla tower will be able to destroy the shield, but the Blitzer is not able to output damage fast enough to destroy the ballistic shield. It is able to trigger mines, damage the AR guard dog and send it into their repair state, and also destroy the Patriot exosuit. One interesting thing I noticed about the Blitzer is that the lightning can grow through the shield generator relay. You can see here that the arc thrower cannot pierce from outside, but the Blitzer lightning is able to make its way through. When it comes to the Blitzer charge, as I mentioned before, the timing the charge doesn't need any manual action from you. The whole quote-unquote reload animation is just a visual. You can holster your Blitzer, take out your secondary and fire, and then switch back to it, and it will already be fully charged, ready for another shot. When it comes to maximizing your downtime, you can weave in a melee hit, you can take a moment to scan your surroundings, or even quickly call in a stratagem such as a resupply. There is no way that I found to lower or cheat the charge time, except for quickly swapping a drop Blitzer with another Blitzer. It seems that when the Blitzer is dropped and picked up, you can bypass any charge time, even if the weapon was just recently fired and then dropped. When it comes to firing the weapon, even if you are running and gunning, you would still suffer a movement penalty when you actually fire the Blitzer. Because of this, it would be best to fire the weapon while performing another action, such as ascending or descending with the jump pack, falling off of a short ledge, or before or after a mantle. Although diving is a good way to also set distance while actively shooting the Blitzer, a single rock kind of protruding off of the ground is enough to send you to a ragdoll state. So something that is a bit of a better option is to crouch slide. And crouch sliding is when you enter a crouch from a sprinting state. And doing this while shooting the Blitzer still allows you to move in a controlled way, keeping your momentum, and if you have to dive to dodge something, you still have that option. The only word of caution about crouch sliding is that you need to have stamina to do it, otherwise you're just going to be standing there going to a crouch really slow. More on firing the Blitzer, certain terrain can block your shots such as bushes and trees, and the Blitzer will lock onto things on the floor such as dead bodies. And this was not a problem with the arc thrower since the lightning can chain from the corpse to another enemy, but with the Blitzer, if it hits the dead body, it just ends there and it's wasted. So try and aim above your enemy to better your odds of the lightning auto-targeting to your intended target. I don't have many tips for the Terminids since fighting them is pretty straightforward, but for the automatons I have a couple things to share. One would be to implement jiggle peeking, which is when you're holding ground with the Blitzer, you want to use the cover in between shots, only peeking out to fire when you have a shot that is fully charged so you don't expose yourself while you're going through that charge time. I would also like to mention that beyond the EMS mortar and stun grenades, smokes are also good to use since it can also help you and your team for disengaging, but also help you when you want to engage closer to your enemies. Getting close is very useful for fighting enemies with the Blitzer, including the scout striders, and a neat tip for dealing with scout striders is to get below them and fire a shot at the undercarriage, which the Blitzer can penetrate. You can even dive and shoot it from below, at times killing in one shot. When it comes to your teammates, of course the Blitzer, like any other arc arc weapon can hurt your teammates, and unless they're getting the full dosage of lightning bolts, they should be fine. I've seen 3 bolts hit a teammate and it sent their health to 10%, but they were able to just walk that off. Another thing about damaging teammates is that when it hits them and then if they survive, it sends them to a short ragdoll state, which I found very interesting. For armor choices, there's a lot to choose from. Light armor gives you the speed and stamina recovery for your crowd slides and run and gun playstyle. Armor that capitalizes on utilities such as more grenades for stuns and stims, since you will more than likely always be in the thick of things, are also good choices. The only thing I'd advise against is heavy armor because you need to be at least somewhat mobile, and if you were to take heavy armor, just you wanted to take heavy armor, I would advise against the one that reduces crouch or prone recoil, because that doesn't really matter to something like the Blitzer. In terms of where you fit with your team, because of the limited range of the Blitzer and the potential for friendly fire, you should be more often than not at the front leading the way. If you and a teammate are beside another and need to address the terminal as you're getting swarmed, your teammate should be the one to do it, as you are the one with a weapon that has crowd control and heavy stagger, and you can attack multiple things at once. Also, like I said before, the weapon cannot arc the lightning, but you may get more than 3 kills with one shot because of the fact that the lightning can still go through a unit, basically piercing through it and hitting another unit. And in this clip, I fired a Blitzer at a group of scavengers. You see here that 3 are targeted, and you can see here with this little blue visual that the bolts have made contact. But then you see that right after that, 2 other scavengers behind them are also hit. Multi-kills of this type are possible, but very rare, and it's just another thing to add to the list of Blitzer oddities. Lastly, it's not an arc weapon without the misfire, and as a reminder, the misfire is when you basically shoot your arc weapon and nothing happens. It makes a sound, it goes through that charge animation, but nothing happens. I do have to say though that I feel that I experience the misfire less often with the Blitzer compared to the arc thrower. Big caveat about the arc thrower is that it's really poor at close range, but with the Blitzer I was able to deal with anything that jumped close to me. Nonetheless, the misfire is still an annoying part of the weapon, and I won't go so much into it because the devs have already acknowledged it to be an issue and are working on it, so who knows, hopefully by the next patch it won't even be here anymore. And looking through my notes here, that's pretty much it though. I spent my whole weekend labbing the Blitzer, and I would be appreciative if anyone is able to help me in kind of breaking down the behavior of the arc lighting for it. Overall, the weapon feels great. The increased rate of fire makes it possible to stun lock enemies into a coma, and it's really fun to use a run and gun weapon in general. In terms of whether or not it performs great, I say it's great against bugs and fair against automatons. Keep in mind that it is a primary weapon with infinite ammo, so it should, for balance sakes, have its list of pros and cons. It's a great mob clearing weapon, and I'm glad a lot of you were mentioning it to me in my arc thrower video so I could check it out. I think the weapon's at a great state right now, and because of the recent buff, a lot of people are now checking it out and seeing that it's more than just a novelty weapon. I'm very curious to see what you all think about the Arc Blitzer as well as what your experience with the weapon has been. So once again, thanks for checking out the video and have a nice day.
You have maintained our way of life.